Good afternoon, Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Monday, February 19th. We tried this once before on Facebook Live. It didn't work, so you're not dreaming if you think you're seeing this a second time. This time, I hope with some sound. It's a holiday, George Washington's birthday, so things are slow. But there's always something to be done cleaning up after Donald Trump. Over the weekend, he went on a Twitter storm trying to explain how there wasn't anything to the indictment of 13 Russians. It was all about clearing him. Well, not exactly. The Russians did help elect him, and he was happy to cite their work throughout the election. So there is that. Apart from any illegalities, that fact remains. One of the most interesting things over the weekend was provided by an Arkansan who works for Donald Trump. You may know the White House Communications Office is full of Arkies, including Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Well, her deputy, Hogan Gidley, who's an El Dorado native, went on Fox News over the weekend and said the cause of chaos in the United States is the Democratic Party and the news media, not Russians. That's something that certainly Donald Trump would agree with, and the Russians too, for that matter. But that's not exactly who elected him, or was it? We shall see. Interesting news on the election front. The Center for American Progress has done a 50-state study of election security in the United States. Important topic with Russians trying to interfere in our elections, both with propaganda and hacking into state computer files. Arkansas ranked in the bottom 5 of the states, a D- or an F for its election security procedures, particularly because we don't have a paper trail for all the voting machines used in all of the counties. That we can leave some of the responsibility to Mark Martin. He was in Washington this weekend basking in the glory of the Little Rock Nine, who he'd helped get an award from the National Secretaries of State Association. He didn't use that as an opportunity to talk about how he'd worked with the Republican Party and Chris Kobach of Kansas particularly to work on ballot purges, voter roll purges, and voter suppression by making it very hard, particularly for minority people to vote. That was left said for another time, but I'm happy to say it. Guns are a big issue in the country. There's still a lot of fallout from the massacre in Florida last week. This one seems likely to stay in the public eye a little bit longer because the young people are energized. They're talking about having a march on Washington, March 24th. That's a good thing. Even Donald Trump says, well, he might be willing to take a look at the bill that's been dead in Congress that would at least tighten up the background checking procedures and cover people in private sales and that sort of thing. But he's talked about a lot of things he'd look at. He hadn't done much that's contrary to what the NRA wants, of course. One thing we could do is have Congress approve a repeal of the Dickey Amendment. This is named for the late congressman from Arkansas, a Republican, who later said he was sorry for what he'd done, and he passed legislation that prevents public health research into guns. You know, there are ways we could perhaps find some ways to make guns safer, not take them away, but have some measures that have some positive benefits, as we did in studying car wrecks and found ways to make them safer to drive. The NRA hadn't been willing to go for that so far, and so far there's only a single Republican from Florida who's on this legislation, certainly none of the ones from Arkansas, and I'm sure French Hill, the 2nd District Congressman, the Republican from Little Rock, will be last. $1 million was spent by the NRA to beat his strong opponent, Pat Hayes, in 2014. He's not going to cross the NRA, and given a chance, he says, well, I'll vote for the good stuff and oppose the bad stuff. Well, so far all he's done is support NRA legislation and oppose legislation that would make guns more common sense and safer. That's French Hill. Remember him come voting time. The special session of the legislature took a break today for the holiday. Asa Hutchins is going to have a news conference later this afternoon and likely say that he's okay with the idea of a special session to deal narrowly, maybe with the Medicaid expansion program, certainly with the unhappiness by pharmacists over a new reimbursement schedule, which shows some sign perhaps of getting worked out outside of the legislature. Maybe we're not sure about that yet. But the governor certainly isn't looking for a contentious legislative session. Conservatives in the legislature are still pushing hard to end Medicaid support in Arkansas, even though that'll throw 300,000 people off. Well, if you want to resist, here's one way to do it. Go down to Whitewater Tavern tonight. Yeah, you can have a beer, but from 5 to 9 p.m. today, Hear Our Voice is having a postcard writing party. Some 200 people turned out last year to write 700 cards. They're going to do the same this year, and also have people present from movements such as Planned Parenthood, and a gun control group and a variety of other interest groups that have some progressive ideas to send our congressmen who certainly know they can need them. That's 5 to 9 tonight at the Whitewater Tavern. Hear Our Voice. I'm Max Brantley. You'll hear mine again tomorrow.